Prince Lucerys Velaryon was born in 115 AC. While we don't currently know where exactly he was born, it was most likely either Driftmark, Dragonstone, or King's Landing. While most of the history books refer to him as Lucerys, we do know that those familiar with him knew him as Luke. He was the second-born son of Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen, the named heir of King Viserys Targaryen, and her first husband, Sir Laenor Velaryon. However, it was widely speculated that his true father was his mother's sworn shield, Sir Harwin Strong. Like his brothers, he was a dragon rider, with his dragon being the young Arax. Luke was a strong, strapping lad and skilled in arms for his age. Like his brothers, Jacaerys and Joffrey, he had brown eyes, hair, and a pug nose. This made many at court suspect that Sir Harwin Strong was in fact the boy's true father, among several other key pieces of evidence. We are told that his grandfather, King Viserys I Targaryen, was delighted with Luke when he was presented at court. However, given his common and un-Valyrian look, many began speculating regarding his true parentage, chief among them, Alicent Hightower and her Green faction. As the histories tell us, the king was blind to any of this speculation, no matter how based in truth it may have been. In the year 118 AC, Rhaenyra announced the betrothal of her eldest sons, Jacaerys and Lucerys, to Rhaena and Baela Targaryen, the twin daughters of her uncle, Prince Daemon Targaryen, and Laenor Velaryon, the elder sister of her husband, Laenor. Luke's apparent father, Laenor Velaryon, died in 120 AC, supposedly murdered in the markets of Spicetown on Driftmark, under very suspect circumstances. His sons, including Lucerys, and the rest of his family, gathered at Driftmark for his funeral. This funeral would be eventful, and forever go down in the pages of history as one of the key moments in the build-up to the Dance of the Dragons. The night after the funeral, Luke's uncle, Prince Aemond Targaryen, aged 10 years of age, secretly claimed Vhagar, the dragon of the recently deceased Laenor Velaryon. Luke's aunt, Aemond, was caught by his 3-year-old nephew, Prince Joffrey. In the attempt to keep him quiet, Aemond slapped the boy and threatened him before shoving him into a pile of dragon droppings and mounting Vhagar. On his return from his first flight on Vhagar, Aemond found that Joffrey had woken up his elder brothers, the then 5-year-old Lucerys and the 6-year-old Jacaerys, who attacked him with wooden training swords. Despite the fight being 3-on-1, Aemond, being a much more skilled fighter, fought back against his much younger nephews, breaking Luke's nose and taking one of the training swords and cracking it over Jace's head. But when Aemond called his nephew Strongs, in reference to the widely circulated rumours surrounding their parentage, Jace, being old enough to understand the insult, attacked Aemond again. When again Aemond gained the upper hand and began to beat Jace savagely, Luke drew his dagger and slashed at Aemond's face, taking out his right eye. After the incident, Aemond's mother, Queen Alicent Hightower, called for Lucerys to lose an eye as penance, which King Viserys refused, while Luke's mother, Princess Rhaenyra, demanded that Aemond should be questioned sharply until he revealed where he heard her sons being described as Strongs, as naming them as such was suggesting they were bastards, and therefore Rhaenyra was guilty of high treason by sleeping with Sir Harwin Strong. Persuaded by his father, Aemond eventually admitted to hearing the names from his brother, Prince Aegon. King Viserys declared afterwards that anyone who dared to mock his grandsons as Strongs ever again would have their tongues pulled out with hot pincers. Further, Rhaenyra and her sons were to stay at Dragonstone, while Alicent and her sons returned to King's Landing. This incident is highlighted as a key moment where King Viserys' inaction at the infighting within his own house led directly to the Dance of the Dragons. On one hand, you had the Queen insisting that a child have his eye removed, on the other the princess, who was insinuating the torture of her younger brother to find out the source of the rumours. Viserys' inaction in dealing with the infighting would only escalate the tensions further. Later in that year, Lucerys' newly widowed mother, Rhaenyra Targaryen, married her uncle, Prince Daemon Targaryen, leading to speculation that Daemon had a hand in Laenor's sudden death, supported by the rumours of Rhaenyra and Daemon's prior relationship before her marriage. As a result, Luke's half-brother Aegon was born at the end of the year, followed quickly by Viserys in 122 AC. Unlike their Velaryon half-brothers, Rhaenyra's youngest sons looked entirely Targaryen, with their iconic silver hair and violet eyes, fanning the flame of the rumours of the Velaryon boy's parentage even further. 4 years later, in 126 AC, Luke's grandfather, Lord Corlys Velaryon, the famous sea snake, became ill. This led to the question of who would succeed him as Lord of the Tides and Master of Driftmark, which swiftly turned into a debate, as both his children, with Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, Laenor and Laenor, were dead, and as things stood with the succession, Rhaenyra Targaryen, eldest son Lucerys, would eventually succeed his own grandfather and mother to the Iron Throne. Rhaenyra urged Corlys to name her second son Lucerys as his heir, but Corlys's elder nephew, Sir Aemond Velaryon, protested on the grounds that Rhaenyra's Velaryon sons were not Laenor's, but the bastards of Harwin Strong. Rhaenyra had her husband seize Aemond and strike off his head, and fed the body to her dragon, Syrax. Aemond's 5 cousins fled to King's Landing with Aemond's wife and sons, Damian and Daeron Velaryon, to seek justice before the king. Viserys heard them out, but ordered each of the cousins' tongues to be removed when they called Rhaenyra's sons bastards. By this time, Viserys' hand had become infected after cutting it on the throne, and it was feared that he might soon die. On the first day of 127 AC, the king held a feast to celebrate the return of his health, and Rhaenyra and Alicent made a show of enmity and love, but tensions still remained between the factions under the surface. After the king left the feast to return to his chambers, Aemond toasted his 3 Velaryon nephews, speaking in mock admiration of their brown hair, brown eyes, and strength, calling them the 3 strong boys. Aemond's speech caused fighting to break out between Aemond and Aegon and the so-called strong boys. In 129 AC, King Viserys I Targaryen died in his sleep, and with it the Dance of Dragons began. Rhaenyra Targaryen was Viserys' choice of heir. However, the Greens supported her younger half-brother, King Aegon II Targaryen, Viserys' eldest son. Aegon offered Rhaenyra generous peace terms, saying that if she would submit to him, among other things, he would allow that Lucerys would be recognised as the rightful heir to Driftmark and the land and holdings of House Velaryon, but she rejected this offer. Lucerys was only 13 years old at the start of the Civil War, and had long served as a squire, as many young nobles did at his age. His dragon Arax was thriving and growing every year, but was still small compared to the older adult dragons. At Rhaenyra's first Black Council meeting on Dragonstone, Lucerys and his brother Jacaerys volunteered to serve as envoys to the lords of Westeros to raise support for her claim to the throne, to show their legitimacy as Targaryens by riding on dragons. Rhaenyra allowed this, but she first made her young sons swear on the 7-pointed star that they would not take part in any fighting and would only serve as her messengers. Lucerys, as the younger brother, was sent on a mission that was considered less dangerous, shorter, and much safer than his brother Jacaerys' flight, flying on Arax as a messenger to Storm's End, where it was expected that Lord Boros Baratheon would give him a warm welcome due to his kinship to Princess Rhaenys, Lucerys' grandmother. However, Prince Aemond Targaryen had already arrived at the castle on Vhagar to acquire Boros' allegiance to his brother, King Aegon II, by agreeing to marry one of Boros' 4 daughters. In the Round Hall, Aemond loudly greeted Lucerys as little Luke Strong the Bastard, and asked if he was wet from the rain or if he had pissed himself with fear. Luke ignored Aemond's insults and delivered his letter to Boros. Lord Baratheon asked him that if he aligned with Rhaenyra, which of his daughters would Luke wed, and told him to pick one. Luke admitted he could not do so, as he was betrothed to his cousin, Rhaenyra Targaryen. Boros replied that he thought as much, and told him to go home, to tell his mother not to have expected the Lord of Storm's End to obey like a stray dog. Before Lucerys could leave Storm's End, Aemond drew his sword, and told him he owed him a debt he now had to pay. Aemond revealed the sapphire he wore in place of his missing right eye, and told Luke to put out his own eye, and he would let him go. Lucerys obviously refused to fight him, telling him he came as an envoy, not a knight, but Aemond demanded Luke's eye or his life. At this, Lord Boros intervened, not wanting the blood of envoys to be shed under his roof, and his guards escorted Lucerys back to the castle yard, where Arrax eagerly awaited him amidst a growing terrible storm. When Boros's daughter, Maris, taunted Aemond, asking him if Lucerys had removed his balls as well as his eye, it is said that Aemond became enraged. When he asked Boros leave to go, Boros told Aemond that he had no say about what he did while not underneath Boros's roof, and allowed him to depart Storm's End. The young dragon Arrax was struggling badly to stay aloft in the storm as Aemond mounted Vhagar and went after Luke. Arrax was indeed younger and swifter, and on a calm day could have possibly have been able to outfly her pursuer, but the weather impeded him, and Vhagar was 5 times the size of her foe and a hardened survivor of hundreds of battles. The two dragons met above Shipbreaker Bay. According to Archmaester Gyldayn, if it was a fight, it could not have lasted long. Arrax fell, broken, to be swallowed by the storm-lashed waters of the bay. His head and neck were washed up beneath the cliffs below Storm's End 3 days later. Prince Lucerys' body was never found. It is presumed lost at sea or consumed by Vhagar. The full Mushrooms testimony claimed Aemond located Luke's corpse, also washed up on the shore with what was left of his dragon, and removed both of his eyes to present them to Lady Maris on a bed of seaweed. However, Archmaester Gyldayn's histories consider that wholly unlikely. Gyldayn instead notes that some claim that Vhagar snatched Lucerys off Arrax's back and swallowed him whole. Some have even claimed that Luke survived his fall and swam to safety, but lost all memory of who he was, spending the rest of his days as a simple-minded fisherman. But more legitimate historians, such as Munkin, disregard such tales and state that Lucerys died with his dragon, and in reality, this is the most likely course of events. With Luke's death, the Dance of the Dragons was no longer a matter of diplomacy, but began a war of fire and blood. It was the spark that lit the flame of war that would tear down the House of the Dragon. Aemond Targaryen gained the title of Aemond the Kinslayer that day, and did not receive a hero's welcome in King's Landing. It is said that Dowager Queen Alicent Hightower turned icy pale and cried out in horror and for the mother's mercy when she learned what her son had done at Storm's End. His grandfather and the Hand of the King, Sir Otto Hightower, was also equally as displeased, telling Aemond, "You lost only one eye. How could you be so blind?" However, Aemond's brother, King Aegon II, welcomed him home with a great feast and announced that he had made a good beginning. Meanwhile, on Dragonstone, Queen Rhaenyra Targaryen collapsed when told her son Luke's death, and his younger brother Joffrey swore an oath of vengeance against Aemond and Boros.